The crimson glow of twin moons painted Mars colony's dome in blood-red shadows as Titus watched his target through the scope of his pulse rifle. The alien diplomat, if you could call it that, slithered across the pristine white floor of its private quarters, all 6 appendages moving in hypnotic rhythm. Confirmed target, Executioner 6, Rena's voice crackled in his ear. Her tone carried the same icy precision it had during his training years. Confirmed. Backstrat Ambassador. Threat level Omega. Titus adjusted his position on the maintenance catwalk, the smart fabric of his tactical suit adjusting to eliminate any sound, ready for a clean execution. The alien paused at its meditation pool, completely unaware of the death waiting above. Its scaled skin shimmered as it began its evening prayers, or whatever passed for prayer among its kind. Titus had stopped wondering about alien cultures long ago, they were all the same in the end, threats to human sovereignty that needed to be eliminated. Execute. The pulse rifle hummed to life. One shot, clean through the creature's primary brain stem. No suffering, no mess. That's what made him the best. The ambassador's body collapsed without a sound, dissolving into the shallow pool as its biological failsafe activated. Target neutralized, Titus reported, already dismantling his weapon. No witnesses, no trace. Excellent work, 6, Rena's voice softened slightly. Return to base. Council has a priority assignment for you. Something in her tone made an impact. In 15 years as an executioner, he'd never heard Rena sound concerned. The trip back to Earth took 3 hours in his stealth shuttle, plenty of time to review the mission logs and file his report. Standard procedure, threat identified, threat eliminated, Earth security maintained. He'd done it hundreds of times. So why did Rena's voice keep echoing in his head? Earth Command's underground complex stretched 50 levels below the rebuilt ruins of Geneva. Titus made his way through layers of security, his black executioner uniform and silver rank insignia clearing every checkpoint. The lower he went, the fewer personnel he encountered. Level 48 was practically deserted. Rena waited for him outside the council chamber. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing the cybernetic implant that replaced her left eye, a souvenir from the Proxima War. She studied him with an intensity that made him straighten his posture automatically. 6, she nodded. You've done exemplary work these past months. The council is impressed. Thank you, Commander. This next assignment, she paused, choosing her words carefully, it's different. You'll be working directly under council supervision. Maximum security. No external communication. Titus frowned. What's the target? See for yourself. Rena pressed her palm to the scanner, and the massive door slid open silently. The council chamber was dark except for the holographic displays floating above the curved table. 5 figures sat in shadow, their features obscured by privacy fields. In the center of the room, a prisoner containment pod hummed with energy. Executioner 6, the central figure spoke, voice distorted. Step forward and witness the greatest threat to humanity's survival. The pod's opacity cleared, revealing its occupant. Titus felt his breath catch. She was humanoid, but her skin was a deep violet that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Long silver hair floated around her face as if suspended in water. But it was her eyes that struck him, solid black except for pinpoints of starlight that seemed to dance in their depths. She wore simple white prisoner's garb but carried herself with unmistakable dignity. The last of the Tardon, the council member announced, a race of telepaths and manipulators who nearly destroyed the third colony. This one has been contained using specialized dampening fields but remains extremely dangerous. Your assignment is to study its capabilities and prepare for final termination. The prisoner turned her head slightly, and those star-filled eyes met his. Something passed between them, a recognition, a warning. He couldn't tell. But for a moment, the world seemed to shift on its axis. I understand, he heard himself say, even as doubt crept into his mind for the first time in his career. When do I begin? Immediately, the council member replied. Commander Rena will brief you on security protocols. This creature must not be allowed any opportunity to use its abilities. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Council. Titus maintained his professional demeanor, though he couldn't shake the lingering effect of that brief eye contact. The prisoner, he forced himself to think of her that way, had returned to staring straight ahead, her face impassive. Outside the chamber, Rena led him to a secure briefing room. As soon as the door sealed, her rigid posture softened slightly. Her name is Viola, Rena said quietly, activating a holographic display, though that's our designation, not her true name. The Tardon don't use verbal language as we understand it. Images flickered through the air, surveillance footage of earlier containment attempts, medical scans, incident reports. Titus absorbed the information with practiced efficiency but found his attention drawn to the physical details. She looked so human, yet so distinctly alien. The violet skin seemed to pulse with subtle patterns, like the surface of an exotic sea. Why me? He asked finally. Rena's cybernetic eye whirred as she focused on him. You have the highest success rate in the Corps. 0 collateral damage. Perfect emotional control. She paused. And you've never questioned an assignment until now. He met her gaze steadily. I didn't say that. But her organic eye narrowed slightly. The containment facility is on sublevel 50. You'll have unlimited access, but every interaction will be monitored. The dampening field must remain active at all times. No exceptions. What exactly are her capabilities? Officially, telepathy, empathic manipulation, possibly telekinesis. But the records are incomplete. Rena tapped a few commands into the console. The Tardon were encountered 40 years ago during the expansion into the Kina sector. Initial contact was peaceful, but then colonies started reporting mass psychological incidents. Entire populations experiencing shared hallucinations, altered memories, emotional manipulation on a planetary scale. The holographic display showed footage of rioting colonists, medical wards filled with catatonic patients, children drawing strange symbols on walls with obsessive dedication. The Council ordered immediate containment and elimination, Rena continued. It took 5 years to track down every enclave. Viola is the last confirmed survivor. And your job is to interrogate her. Study her. Why not just execute her immediately? The Council wants to understand her abilities first. Previous attempts at study have been unsuccessful. The researchers developed extreme emotional attachments, became unstable. Some committed suicide, others tried to help her escape. Rena's voice hardened. That's why we're using an executioner this time. Someone trained to resist manipulation. Titus nodded. But something about the situation nagged at him. The footage shows massive civilian casualties, but her file lists no direct kills. How does the most dangerous alien species we've encountered never actually kill anyone? Questions like that aren't part of your assignment. 6. Rena's tone carried a warning. Focus on the mission. Learn what you can about her capabilities. Prepare for termination. Nothing else matters. Understood? Commander. The containment facility was a stark white cube, 30 meters on each side. One wall held monitoring equipment and life support systems. Another contained a simple bed and sanitation unit. The remaining space was empty except for the prisoner pod in the center. Viola stood perfectly still as Titus entered, but he felt her awareness of him like a physical sensation. The dampening field hummed at the edge of hearing. I'm Executioner 6, he said formally. I'll be conducting your evaluation. Titus, her voice was musical, with an accent he couldn't place. You prefer Titus to 6, though you rarely admit it. He maintained his neutral expression, but his pulse quickened. He hadn't introduced himself by name. The dampening field blocks most of my abilities, she continued, watching him with those starlit eyes, but some things leak through. Surface thoughts, strong emotions. A slight smile curved her lips. Your curiosity, for instance. It tastes like cinnamon. Attempting to manipulate an executioner is unwise, he said coldly. Is it manipulation to speak the truth? To see what is already there? She moved closer to the edge of the pod, her movements graceful despite the restraining field. You have questions. So many questions burning behind that careful mask you wear. About me, about my people, about why you're really here. I'm here to study you before termination. Nothing more. Then study me, Titus. She pressed one delicate hand against the transparent barrier. But be warned, understanding often leads to uncomfortable truths. He found himself stepping closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. The shifting patterns in her skin created mesmerizing designs, like abstract art painted in bioluminescent ink. Her features were exotic yet beautiful, with high cheekbones and full lips that. Titus caught himself and stepped back sharply. This was exactly how she had affected the other researchers. He needed to maintain professional distance. We'll begin with basic capability testing, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. The Council wants to understand the full extent of your powers. The Council, Viola laughed softly. They understand nothing. They see a threat to be eliminated because that's safer than facing the truth about themselves. She tilted her head, studying him. But you're different. You see more than they expect you to, don't you? What I see is irrelevant. My duty is clear. Is it? She moved away from the barrier, her hair floating in ethereal patterns. Then why do you dream of stars you've never visited? Why do you feel empty after each perfect execution? Why does your hand shake slightly when you think about terminating me? Titus glanced down at his right hand. It was trembling almost imperceptibly. He clenched it into a fist. Enough games, he snapped. You'll answer my questions directly, or you'll kill me. Viola's expression held something like pity. That's always the human solution, isn't it? Destroy what you don't understand. Eliminate what makes you uncomfortable. She sighed. My people sought to help humanity evolve beyond such limited things, thinking to show you the connections that bind all conscious beings. And for that, we were branded monsters. You invaded minds, controlled populations, drove people insane. Is that what the Council told you? She stepped closer again, her presence somehow filling the pod. Look at me, Titus. Really look. Do you see a monster? Or do you see someone trying to survive long enough to reveal the truth? He did look. He couldn't help himself. And in those impossible eyes, he saw intelligence, determination, and something else, a profound sadness that resonated with his own carefully buried emotions. A warning chime indicated the end of the session. Titus backed away, struggling to regain his professional demeanor. We'll continue tomorrow, he said stiffly. Until tomorrow, then. And Titus, dreams taste like stardust. Remember that. Viola's voice followed him to the door. That night, Titus couldn't sleep. He paced his Spartan quarters in the executioner's wing, reviewing mission files until his eyes burned. The official reports were comprehensive, detailing the Tartan's systematic elimination with cold precision. But something felt off. The timing didn't match. Colony outbreaks occurred months after initial contact, not during. And the psychological symptoms varied wildly. Some populations reported blissful shared consciousness, others descended into paranoid chaos. It was as if a soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Rena's ID flashed on his comm, 6. Meet me in training room 3. Now. The training rooms were designed for combat simulation, but room 3 was special, completely shielded from surveillance. Rena stood in the center of the empty space, her cybernetic eye glowing faintly in the dim light. "Your first session with the Tardon was interesting," she said without preamble. "You were watching." "I'm always watching, 6. It's my job." She circled him slowly. "You let her get inside your head. The dampening field isn't perfect." Rena stopped in front of him. "Tell me what you felt." Titus hesitated. In 15 years, he'd never lied to his commander. There was a connection. Something I can't explain. Of course, there was. That's what they do. Her organic eye narrowed. But you felt something else, too. Doubt. The mission files have inconsistencies, he admitted. The timeline doesn't add up. Rena's voice cut like a blade. Listen very carefully, 6. There are things you're not cleared to know. Things that would compromise your ability to complete this mission. Focus on the task at hand. With all respect, Commander, if I'm to evaluate her capabilities effectively. Your job is to determine the quickest, cleanest way to terminate her. Rena stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Nothing more, nothing less. Is that clear? Crystal clear. She studied him for a long moment. Get some sleep, 6. Tomorrow will be challenging. But sleep proved impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those star-filled depths looking back at him, heard that musical voice speaking of dreams and stardust, felt that inexplicable connection. Morning found him back in the containment facility, determined to maintain professional distance. Viola stood waiting as if she hadn't moved all night. Your dreams were troubled, she said softly. Stay out of my head, he. Stay out of my head, he snapped, forcing a professional calm. My dreams are my own concern. Are they? Or are they echoes of possibilities, whispers of what could be? You believe the Council's lies, Titus, but deep down, you know something is wrong. Viola stepped closer to the barrier, her voice a silken whisper that seemed to bypass the dampening field. The Tardon didn't seek to control. We sought to guide, to share our understanding of the universe's interconnectedness. But humanity was too afraid, too fractured by its own internal conflicts. He ignored her words, focusing on the equipment readouts. Begin capability testing. First, telepathic range. I'm going to move outside the containment field. Attempt to read my thoughts. He exited the facility and sealed the door behind him. Rena's voice came over his comm, what are you doing, 6? You're deviating from the protocol. Conducting a live test of her telepathic range, Commander. As per Council directive to fully assess her capabilities. Maintain a safe distance. Do not engage in conversation. He moved to the observation deck, a reinforced glass window overlooking the containment facility. Viola stood motionless, her eyes fixed on his location. He cleared his mind, focusing on a simple image, a red sun rising over a barren landscape. It was a memory from his childhood on Mars. A moment later, Viola spoke. A red sun. Mars. A childhood spent dreaming of Earth, of oceans you'd never seen. Her voice echoed in his mind, clear as if she were standing beside him. A longing for connection, masked by duty and discipline. He broke the connection abruptly, his heart pounding. She was far more powerful than the reports indicated. That's enough, he said into the comm, returning to the facility. I agree, Rena's voice was tight. Terminate the test. Re-establish full containment. Back inside, Titus activated the dampening field to its maximum setting. Viola swayed slightly, as if disoriented, but she maintained her composure. Impressive, he said, struggling to regain control. You managed to bypass the field. That makes you even more dangerous than we thought. Or perhaps it means your defenses are weaker than you believe, she countered. The field suppresses direct telepathy, but it can't block empathy. I feel your emotions, Titus. Your fear, your doubt, your growing sense of betrayal. Enough. Next, empathic manipulation. I'm going to project specific emotions. Try to amplify them. He took a deep breath, focusing on anger, a familiar and easily accessible emotion. He thought of his parents, killed in a pirate raid on a Martian transport. He pictured the raiders' faces, their greed, their brutality. Viola flinched, her violet skin paling slightly. Hatred, a burning rage. So familiar, so easy for you to access. But it's a cage, Titus. A prison you built for yourself. He increased the intensity of his projected anger, pushing it to the limit. He wanted to see how far she could go. Stop it. Viola cried, her voice filled with pain. You're hurting yourself. This anger, it's consuming you. He ignored her, pressing harder. He wanted to break her, to prove that she was a monster. Suddenly, a wave of calm washed over him, extinguishing his anger as if it were a candle flame. He felt at peace, serene, detached from all emotion. It was the most incredible feeling he'd ever experienced. What did you do? He gasped. I showed you the alternative, Viola said softly. I showed you what it feels like to be free from the prison of your own emotions. The effect faded quickly, replaced by a surge of confusion and fear. He staggered backward, his hand reaching for his pulse rifle. Don't be afraid, Viola said. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help you see the truth. The truth is that you're a dangerous alien who needs to be eliminated. Is it? Or is the truth that humanity is on the brink of self-destruction, consumed by fear and hatred? My people tried to show you a better way, but you rejected us. And now, you're about to make the same mistake again. He didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind was reeling, his emotions in turmoil. He needed to get out of there, to clear his head. Session terminated, he said abruptly. He turned and fled the containment facility, his mind a battleground of conflicting thoughts and emotions. Rena was waiting for him outside the door, her face grim. What happened in there, 6? I saw your biosigns flatline for several seconds. She amplified my emotions. Then she suppressed them. I don't know how she did it. Rena stared at him, her cybernetic eye whirring. You're losing control. You can't let her manipulate you. This mission is too important. I'm not being manipulated, he insisted, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. I'm simply assessing her capabilities. Then assess them quickly, Rena said. The council is growing impatient. They want results. That night, Titus dreamt of Viola. He saw her standing on a distant planet, surrounded by silver trees and violet skies. She reached out to him, her eyes filled with starlight. He woke with a start, his heart pounding, his body covered in sweat. He knew he couldn't ignore it any longer. He had to find out the truth about Viola, about the Tardon, about what the council was hiding. And he knew that the only way to do that was to break the rules. The sting of the stun baton faded, replaced by a dull ache in Marcus's muscles. He lay on the cold floor of the detention cell, his mind racing. Evelyn had been captured, Viola was back in her pod, and the truth was out, or at least, he hoped it was. He'd seen Evelyn activate the transmitter, but he couldn't be sure if the message had gotten through. The council's censorship was absolute. Damn it, he muttered, pushing himself to a sitting position. He had to get out of here, find Evelyn, and make sure the Tardon story was heard. But how? He was just a security guard, with no resources and no allies. Or so he thought. You okay, kid? Marcus looked up to see an older guard standing outside his cell. The guard's name was Ben, and he'd always seemed like a decent guy, even if he was a bit jaded. I've been better, Marcus said. They charged me with treason. Said I helped Dr. Grant. Ben shook his head. I heard what happened. Crazy stuff. But I don't think you're a traitor, Marcus. I think you were just trying to do the right thing. Marcus stared at him, surprised. You do? Yeah, Ben said. I've been working for the council for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of things I don't like. The lies, the corruption, the way they treat people like they're expendable. I'm tired of it. Marcus felt a surge of hope. So you'll help me? Ben hesitated. I don't know, kid. This is risky. If they find out I'm helping you, I'll lose everything. I understand, Marcus said. But if we don't do something, the council will get away with this. They'll rewrite history, and no one will ever know the truth about the Tardon. Ben sighed. All right, kid. I'll help you. But you gotta promise me you won't do anything stupid. I promise, Marcus said. Ben unlocked the cell door and led Marcus to a hidden maintenance tunnel. This will take you to level 47, he said. From there, you can access the communications hub. Try to send a message to the outside world. Let people know what's happening here. What about Evelyn? Marcus asked. I don't know where they're holding her, Ben said. But I'll try to find out. Just focus on getting the message out. That's the most important thing. Marcus nodded and disappeared into the tunnel. He navigated the dark and winding passages, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. He knew he was taking a huge risk, but he couldn't stand by and do nothing while the council controlled everything. He reached the communications hub and quickly set to work. He bypassed the security protocols and accessed the external broadcasting system. He uploaded a message containing Evelyn's testimony, the Tardon's memories, and a plea for help. He hit the send button and prayed that someone would hear it. As he was leaving the hub, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps. He ducked into a nearby storage closet, his heart pounding in his chest. The door swung open, and Commander Rena stepped inside. I know you're here, Rena said, her voice cold and menacing. Come out, Marcus. It's over. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then stepped out of the closet, his hands raised. Rena stared at him, her cybernetic eye glowing faintly. I'm disappointed in you, Marcus, she said. I thought you were one of the good ones. I am one of the good ones, Marcus said. I'm just not one of yours. Rena sighed. You don't understand, Marcus. The Council is protecting humanity. We can't afford to let the Tardon's lies spread. They're not lies, Marcus said. They're the truth. And the Council knows it. Rena shook her head. You've been manipulated, Marcus. You need to forget about this and come back to the Council. I can make it like this never happened. I can't do that, Marcus said. I know too much. Rena's expression hardened. Then I have no choice. She raised her weapon and fired. Marcus dodged the blast and lunged at Rena, knocking her to the ground. They grappled for the weapon, each fighting for control. Marcus managed to disarm Rena, but she retaliated with a swift kick to his chest. He stumbled backward, gasping for air. Rena stood up, her face contorted with anger. She charged at Marcus, tackling him to the ground. They rolled across the floor, exchanging blows. Marcus was smaller and weaker than Rena, but he fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He managed to land a punch on Rena's cybernetic eye, shattering the implant. Rena screamed in pain and staggered backward, clutching her face. Marcus seized the opportunity and grabbed Rena's weapon. He pointed it at her, his hand trembling. It's over, Rena, he said. I'm not going to let you hurt anyone else. Rena stared at him, her eyes filled with hatred. You can't do it, Marcus. You're not a killer. Marcus hesitated. He'd never killed anyone before. But he knew that if he let Rena go, she would continue to spread the Council's lies and oppress humanity. He had to make a choice. He took a deep breath and pulled the trigger. Rena fell to the ground, dead. Marcus stared at her body, his mind reeling. He'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. He knew he couldn't stay in the facility any longer. The Council's forces would be hunting him down. He had to escape, find Evelyn, and continue the fight for the truth. He fled the communications hub, his heart heavy with guilt and resolve. He made his way back to the maintenance tunnels and began his long and perilous journey to freedom. As he navigated the tunnels, he received a calm message from Ben. "Marcus, I found Evelyn. She's being held in the Level 51 interrogation center. But the security is tight. I don't know how you're going to get her out." "I'll find a way," Marcus said. "Just tell her I'm coming." He pressed on, his determination fueled by the hope of reuniting with Evelyn and exposing the Council's crimes to the world. He knew the odds were stacked against him, but he refused to give up. He was a rebel now, a fighter for the truth, and he would not rest until justice was served. Leah sat in the dimly lit safe house, her fingers dancing across the holographic keyboard. News of Evelyn's broadcast had spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of rebellion across the globe. But the Council was fighting back, censoring the news, spreading disinformation, and cracking down on dissent. The battle for the truth had only just begun. "Any word from Marcus?" Leah asked, turning to her tech specialist, a wiry young woman named Samira. Samira shook her head. "His comm signal is weak, but I managed to trace him to Level 51. He's heading for the interrogation center." Leah frowned. "That's where they're holding Evelyn. He's walking into a trap." "He knows the risks," Samira said. "He's determined to save her." Leah sighed. "I know. That's what worries me. He's brave, but he's reckless. He needs our help." "What can we do?" Samira asked. "We're outnumbered and outgunned. The Council controls everything." "We have something they don't," Leah said. "We have the truth. And we have allies, hidden within the Council's ranks." She activated a secure comm channel and contacted a high-ranking official within Earth Command, a man named General Thorne. Thorne had been a friend and colleague of Leah's before she defected, and she knew he shared her doubts about the Council's agenda. "Thorne," Leah said, "it's Leah. I need your help." There was a pause, then Thorne's voice came over the comm. Hope flickered like a fragile flame within Viola's heart. Evelyn's broadcast had been a victory, but the war was far from over. The Council would not relinquish its grip on power easily. They would use every tool at their disposal to silence the truth and crush the rebellion. But Viola had faith in humanity's capacity for change, for empathy, for understanding. She had seen it in Evelyn's eyes, in Marcus's courage, in Leah's unwavering dedication. They were the seeds of a new future, a future where humans and Tardon could coexist in harmony. But for that future to become a reality, Viola had to play her part. She had to use her abilities to inspire hope, to connect minds, to guide humanity toward a better path. But the dampening field was still in place, suppressing her powers and isolating her from the world. She needed a way to break free, to unleash her full potential. As she meditated, focusing her mind on the faint connections that remained, she felt a familiar presence approaching. It was Titus, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. He was drawn to her, yet repelled by the Council's propaganda. He wanted to believe her, but fear held him back. Viola reached out to him, gently probing his thoughts, seeking to soothe his troubled spirit. "Titus," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind. "You are not alone. You are not bound by the Council's lies. You have the power to choose your own destiny." Titus flinched, his mental defenses rising. "Stay out of my head," he retorted, his voice filled with anger and confusion. I don't want to hear your lies. They are not lies, Titus, Viola insisted. They are the truth, buried beneath layers of fear and deception. You have seen the Council's crimes. You have felt their corruption. You know that what they are doing is wrong. Titus hesitated, his resolve wavering. He had seen the inconsistencies in the mission files, the redacted reports, the missing testimonies. He had felt the Council's manipulations, their attempts to control his thoughts and emotions. He knew that Viola was telling the truth, but he was afraid to admit it. What do you want from me? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want you to help me break free, Viola said. I want you to help me spread the truth to the world. I want you to help me create a better future for humanity. Titus stared at her, his mind racing. He knew that helping Viola would be an act of treason, that it would mean turning against everything he had ever believed in. But he also knew that it was the right thing to do. He could no longer stand by and watch as the Council destroyed humanity and silenced the Tardon. How can I help you? He asked, his voice filled with newfound resolve. Viola smiled. There is a bypass code in the dampening field's control system, she said. It is hidden deep within the code, but I can guide you to it. Once you disable the field, I will be able to connect with the minds of everyone on this planet. I will show them the truth, and I will inspire them to fight for a better future. Titus nodded. I'll do it, he said. I'll find the code and disable the field. But you have to promise me something. What is it? Viola asked. Promise me that you won't try to control humanity, Titus said. Promise me that you will only show them the truth, and let them make their own choices. Viola smiled. I promise, she said. The Tardon have no desire to control humanity. We only want to help you evolve, to reach your full potential. Titus left the containment facility, his mind filled with a sense of purpose and determination. He made his way to the dampening field's control room, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that the Council's security forces would be watching him, that they would strike at any moment. But he was not afraid. He had a mission to accomplish, and he would not let anything stand in his way. He reached the control room and quickly set to work, bypassing the security protocols and accessing the dampening field's code. He followed Viola's instructions, navigating the complex lines of code, searching for the hidden bypass code. He worked feverishly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his mind focused on the task at hand. Finally, he found it. The bypass code was hidden within a seemingly innocuous comment, disguised as a routine maintenance instruction. He entered the code and pressed the execute button. The dampening field flickered and died, plunging the containment facility into silence. Viola felt a surge of power coursing through her veins, her mind expanding to encompass the entire planet. She reached out to humanity, gently probing their thoughts, seeking to awaken their empathy and